My reflections this week is actually the second part of what I'd started on hope in uncertain times. And today, specifically, I want to share on a phrase or a statement, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And I want you to go back with me in time, in your life, that moment when, you were down, you were broken, you are afraid, you are ashamed, you are wounded, you are hurt. The seasons of anxiety when you felt almost like, life was over. I know most, if not all of us, have actually been through a season like that. I remember myself in my youth, one time when I felt so down, so low, so, broken, downcast, and I was anxious. I'd gotten into a lot of trouble, whether it's at home, at school, in family, in relationships and friendships, and things were not working out. And I remember crying out to God in a moment like that, telling them, God, if you can deliver me from this season, I'm going to serve you. And right now where I am, I actually have to kind of think, put some effort in remembering exactly what it is that had happened and how the season went. And I'm sure it is the same for most of us. There are some things that might stand out, but the truth is, there's a period when you felt you could not handle it, but here you are today, thinking about it, and probably sharing. And some of us don't even want to share some of those experiences. The truth is, it came and it came to pass, and that's the reality of life. And I was thinking, what if we could actually see beyond the situation and to see probably as God sees. There's a comedian, Mark Lowry, who's also a gospel musician, who shared once about his favorite passage in scripture, and he says, it is the phrase, and it came to pass. I'm sure you've met that over and over in scripture, and it came to pass. Aren't you glad that there is nothing in this life that comes to stay? Every season comes and it passes. And you can find hope in that, knowing that there is nothing that will come that will actually last in that seasons of anxiety. So David says in Psalms 42 verse 5, he says, speaking to himself in a season of anxiety, say, why are you in despair, my soul? Why are you downcast, oh my soul? And he finishes by saying, put your hope in God. Put your hope in God. I remember my mom, I used to tell us when we were going through rough and tough times, one of the things that she continued saying over and over is that God knows. God knows. And it sounds defeatist in some ways, but that is actually the truth, that God knows. And so here is some reasons for finding hope, some 3 reasons that I was thinking about as I was reflecting. One is that God knows what He's doing. God knows what He's doing. Romans 8:28, tells us, in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, those who are called according to His purpose. I know there's a different translation that says that all things work together for the good of those who love Him. But I love the NIV, because NIV specifically says that in all things God works. So what that actually brings us to is not about, we don't actually blame God, because I guess that's the disclaimer, that God does not cause everything to be the way they are. There's always a choice that we've been given, men and the evil heart of man causing us to do all sorts of evil. But there's also the devil and his agents, causing things sometimes not to work out well. But the truth of the matter is that even in those situations, in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him and those who are called according to His purpose. I remember the story of Joseph, who was the brothers, because of jealousy, sold him out to Egypt, and he goes there finding Potiphar's wife because of lust, accuses him falsely, and he ends up in prison. And at one point, things come, again, it all came to pass. And when it comes to pass, there's a moment when these same brothers who sold him off are right in front of him. You know what Joseph tells them? Joseph says, whatever you intended for evil, God used it for good. So God works in all things. And that's what you can actually trust. So find hope in knowing that God knows what he is doing. When you seek him, when you trust him. Number two, he knows that you can make it. God knows that you can make it. I usually tell people, if you want to know who you are, look at the things that you go through. Think about Job, as we shared about Job last week. Right at the beginning, it actually begins with some kind of wager that God, in a conversation, an interesting conversation with the devil, says, have you seen, my servant Job? And when they're actually talking about all the trials that he's going to go through, God specifically gives directions, instructions, and says, make sure you do not touch this and this. So he sets out boundaries. 1 Corinthians 10:13, which I've really been reflecting about, says that there is no temptation that can come your way that is not common to man. It's common. It says, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond that which you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will always provide a way out so that you can endure. So there is nothing. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. So God knows. God has all the confidence in you that you can make it. Even when you look down on yourself and you feel, I can't, all those negative thoughts that keep coming your way. Judges 6, we find a man who is called Gideon at a point in time when they are oppressed and he's anxious and he's in hiding. When he's in hiding, there's an angel that comes. And the words that the angel use, God is with you, you mighty man of valor. And he, of course, is questioning because he's looking at our circumstance, which is what most of us do. And when he says, if God is for us, then why is all this? He says, go forth in this your might. Go forth. So he's speaking to the capacity in him that God knows he has. So God knows that you can make it. Let me encourage you that you can pull through this. But the last part is simply that he knows that it will come to pass. God knows that it will come to pass. Do you know that God has been to the end and he comes back and walks with us? That's why it's called Alpha and Omega. I remember when my daughters were asking about God's existence and what he does when we are in trouble, why he doesn't seem to be answering our prayers as fast. One of the things that we shared is that God is not limited by time like us. He is Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He was not there at the beginning. He created the beginning. So God exists outside of time. He is omnipotent. He has all the ability, he's all powerful, omniscient. He knows all things. He's omnipresent. He is everywhere. And everywhere there has both in time and outside of time. And that's why you can say he's Alpha and Omega. So you can trust that he knows. He has been to the end and he knows that you can pull through it. Somebody said that whatever does not kill you, whatever does not destroy you, it can only make you stronger. And think about what makes you stronger. We are not made stronger by what we can do. Actually, it's when you can overcome that which you cannot do. One time when Jesus was speaking to Peter, I believe it's in Luke chapter 22 from verse 31, he tells him, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. And he goes ahead and says, but I'm praying for you. Now the interesting thing with the prayer is that he was not praying that he does not go through the sifting. He says, I'm praying for you. And after you've come through, after you've come back, encourage your brethren. So he's praying for you, that you go through the sifting, but when you come through, know that there's something that you need to share out there. Not all storms come to destroy us. Some actually come to just clear the path, to make your path clear, to know where you ought to go and how you need to handle it. So brothers and sisters, as I finish today, just to remind you that this too, it shall pass. It shall pass. There are better days that are still up ahead. I always say I may not know what the future holds, but I know one who holds the future. These two shall come to pass. Shalom.